My son just sued me. See, that was the sentence my attorney whispered the moment I picked up the phone. No greeting. No warning. Just a blade straight through the heart. I froze in the darkened boardroom. The city of Boston glowing beneath the rain-soaked glass. For a second I thought I had misheard, but his voice was calm, steady, merciless. Mr. Carter, I need you to listen. Nathan has filed a petition in court. He wants you removed from Carter Steel. See, the words didn't make sense. Nathan, my boy. The child I raised after his mother's sudden death. The kid who used to run through the factory halls wearing my hard hat, laughing like he owned the world. Now he was dragging me into court like I was a stranger. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles turned white. Removed? On what grounds? He's claiming you're unfit to lead. Emotional. Decline. Questionably decisions. He's gathered shareholders who support him. This isn't a bluff. Unletted, understand. The room tilted. 38 years of sacrifice. Of missed birthdays. Of nights spent building an empire from molten steel and sweat. All of it had been for him. And now he was throwing me to the wolves. I remembered the last time Nathan hugged me. Christmas dinner. 3 months ago. His arms had felt cold. Formal. Like we were business partners instead of family. I should have known then. My lawyer kept talking something about evidence. Hearings. Deadlines. But the sound blurred into static. All I could see was the boy who once begged me to take him to Fenway Park. The boy who fell asleep on my shoulder in the 7th inning. That same boy had just declared war on me. When the call ended, I stood alone in the boardroom. Outside, thunder cracked across the harbor. Inside, my world collapsed in silence. I did not sleep. Rain pressed on the roof and memory did the rest. My name is Graham Carter. I built Carter Steel with a saw. Alone. And a promise to Claire. The woman who believed when the bank would not. She said, work matters but home matters first. I heard her. I did not always listen. Carter Steel began in a rented bay behind an auto shop in Dorchester. We cut scrap into clean lines and took the jobs no one wanted. Claire kept the books at our kitchen table with a pencil, because erasing felt honest. I hauled beams in the cold. She pressed a hot cup into my hands and told me to keep going. Our son arrived in the second winter. I held him and promised a future that would carry his name. Claire pressed her forehead to mine and said the only thing he would ever need from me was time. I told her I could give both. Pride nodded. Time did not. The plant grew. 1 bay became 3. We moved to a yard by the river where barges slid past with the patience of old animals. Inside the walls, the day had its own weather. Grinders sang. Forklifts beeped. Sparks floated and died on the concrete. I learned every name on the floor. They trusted me because I showed up. And I trusted them for the same reason. At home, Claire taped our boy's drawings to the fridge. He colored bridges and cranes. He asked how far steel can reach without falling. I said it depends on math and on trust. If a beam lies about its strength, everything comes down. He nodded like he had been waiting for the answer. We made a Boston childhood. Cheap seats at the ballpark. Sunday walks on the common. From far away we looked like any other family. Up close, there were lines only we could see. The first line was time. I told myself I was building a future. So I missed a school play. Then a science fair. Then a birthday that still sits in my chest like a stone. I arrived late with a new bike and a grin I had practiced in the elevator. He said thank you and went upstairs. Later, Claire placed my hand on her chest and said, "This is the clock that matters." I said, "I know." Saying I know is easy. The second line was grief. Claire fell ill in a winter that did not end. In the hospital, she told me not to hide in the plant when she was gone. I told her she was not going anywhere. She smiled the way a person smiles when she knows the weather. She died in spring. The trees on our street were full and careless. Work felt safe, because steel obeys when you respect it. People do not. I slept on a couch in my office and said I was giving my boy space. He went back to school on the other coast and wrote messages that were short and careful. When he came home, he spoke about software like it was a map to tomorrow. I said we would try new tools if they fit the work. He said the work should fit the tools. We both believed we were protecting what we loved. The company kept growing. We built a bridge in Vermont and a stadium frame in Providence. When a recession tried to drown us, we cut pay at the top and kept every worker on the floor. I took the smallest check of my life and slept better than I had in months. My son called it sentimental. I called it duty. He returned to Boston after graduation. He joined the office with a title and a smile that stopped at his teeth. He brought charts and a promise of speed. He wanted robots on the line and a night shift watched by screens. He said, "This is the future." I said, "The future has faces." He said, "Faces do not pay investors." I said, "Investors do not stand at a funeral when a beam fails." I see it now. Our love and our pride built a narrow road. I can point to the meetings I chose over dinner. I can point to the forecasts he chose over people. The road did not appear in one night. It arrived the way rust arrives. Quiet, patient, everywhere at once when you finally look. I should have seen a fight coming. Board members postponed calls. New investors asked about profit, with no room for faces. At the last family dinner, my granddaughter drew a picture of her father and me on opposite sides of a long table. Children do not write reports. They draw truth. It is easy to be clear when the house is quiet and the river has the color of steel. It is harder to admit that I helped lay the track to this moment. I did it with reasons that made sense and with a pride that would not bend. I did it with love that did not look like love to a boy who needed his father to show up with nothing in his hands but time. Dawn pushed the night off the water. I poured coffee and stood at the window until the cup went cold. I knew what I had to do. I would fight for the company because it holds the lives of people who trusted me. I would fight for my son because he carries a promise I made the day he was born. I would have to be steel and flesh. Strong where it counts, soft where it matters. The court would measure one kind of strength. A dinner table would measure the other. I drove to my son's house with my chest full of stones. The summons was still folded in my coat pocket, its edges cutting my hand every time I touched it. I wanted to tear it into dust. I wanted to hold him and ask why. I wanted both at once. The Carters used to live under one roof. Now Nathan lived with his wife, Lauren, and their daughter in a tall brick townhouse near the harbor. Lights glowed behind wide windows. It looked warm, safe, normal. My heart said family. My mind said enemy territory. The door opened before I knocked. Lauren stood there with a smile stretched too tight. "Graham, come in. Dinner's almost ready." Her voice was friendly, but her eyes flicked toward the stairs, searching for her husband. Inside, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Pictures lined the walls, Nathan holding his daughter, the three of them on a beach. Laughter frozen in frames. I wanted to stop and study each one. Instead, I followed Lauren into the dining room. Nathan appeared from the kitchen. Sleeves rolled. Tie loosened. The picture of a young executive at home. "Dad," he said, his tone even, almost rehearsed. "Glad you made it." He hugged me quickly. A handshake disguised as family. I looked into his face, searching for cracks. I saw only confidence and calculation. I wouldn't miss dinner with my granddaughter. That is then Min, as if on cue. Little Emily ran into the room. her paint-stained dress swinging. "Grandpa!" she shouted, climbing into my arms. I held her tight, breathing in the smell of crayons and soap. Her warmth pierced through the cold air between her parents and me. "Did you make me another masterpiece?" I asked. She nodded eagerly and handed me a crumpled paper. 2 stick figures stood far apart, a bridge drawn between them. She tapped the taller one. "That's you. And that's Daddy. You have to meet in the middle." Ooh. Her words cut deeper than any lawyer's petition. Out of the mouths of children comes the truth no adult dares say. We sat down to dinner. Plates clinked. Wine poured. Conversation danced on the surface. Lauren asked about my health. Nathan asked if the factory was running smoothly. Every question carried a blade under velvet. "Production is steady," I answered, keeping my voice calm. "People are proud of their work. Nathan sliced his chicken with surgical precision. "Pride doesn't pay dividends. Efficiency does." Lauren shot him a warning. "Look." He ignored it. "I've been reviewing the numbers," he continued. "Automation could raise margins by 30%. Investors are asking why we're moving so slow." I set down my fork. "Because we are not just steel and machines. We're men and women with lives. You can't fire half the crew and call it progress." Quote, his jaw tightened. "You're letting sentiment run the company. That's why people question your judgment." Quote, the table went silent. Even Emily stopped humming. I stared at my son. For a moment I saw the boy who once begged me to take him fishing, who used to wave at me from the school stage even when I was late. But that boy was gone, replaced by a man who looked at me like an obstacle. Lauren cleared her throat. "Why don't we save work talk for later?" Nathan's eyes stayed locked on mine. Work is all he ever wants to talk about. "Anyone see you?" The words hit like a hammer. My hands trembled under the table, but my voice stayed steady. "Maybe I wanted to give you a world where you never had to worry." "In mine, Phildis." He leaned back, arms crossed. "And maybe you forgot that I needed a father more than a kingdom." "Anyone see you?" The rest of the meal passed in fragments. Emily chattered about preschool, showing me drawings. Lauren tried to keep the air light, but the storm sat heavy between us. When I rose to leave, Nathan walked me to the door. "Dad," he said softly, "things are changing. If you don't step aside, the board will make sure you're pushed." "Naughty." I looked at him under the porch light. Rain dripped from the eaves. "I taught you how to fight. Son, don't forget who gave you those weapons." "Naughty." He didn't answer. He just closed the door. I stood in the rain, holding Emily's drawing of the bridge. I wanted to believe she was right, that we could meet in the middle. But all I felt was the widening gap under my feet. I reached Cole and Mercer before the sun lifted over the harbor. A receptionist led me to a glass room with a long table and a view of the city. Avery Cole entered with a folder and a pen that clicked like a metronome. He had the calm of someone who carries storms for a living. He shook my hand and held it a second longer than most people do. "Graham, sit. We have work." I told him about dinner, the way my son watched me like a juror, the way my granddaughter drew a bridge and asked us to meet in the middle. My voice thinned on her name. Avery let the silence do its job. He opened the folder. "Here is the petition. Your son asks the court to declare you unfit to manage the company. He alleges cognitive decline, financial impulsivity, and refusal to adopt modern practices. He attached board emails and meeting excerpts. He wants temporary control during an evaluation." Temporary control was a clean phrase for a blunt theft. I pushed the paper back. "Can he win?" "He can if we let him choose the story. We will not. We will prove capacity, show track record, and expose motive. You have decades of steady growth. You kept people during the recession. Those facts matter. What do you need from me? Medical records. Names of doctors who can see you this week for a full cognitive workup. Financials for 5 years. Board minutes. Emails that show you tested modernization with pilots and guardrails. We will not argue that change is bad. We will argue that harm is not change. I nodded. I can do that. Avery clicked the pen. Do not confront your son. Do not send angry messages. Speak to no one on the board without me. Assume every hallway has ears. I named the investors I suspected stood with Nathan. He wrote 3 names: Gerald, Pike, Rowena Mills, Omar Lang. Pike likes dividends he can predict. Mills loves disruption when a camera is near. Lang hates risk. If Pike is not fully gone, we can move him. The other 2 will follow numbers or fear. When is the hearing? Preliminary session in 10 days. Judge Miriam Doyle. Strict on decorum. She reads. She watches. She asks her own questions. Do not try charm. Answer. He slid a second folder across the table. This is our outline. First, independent medical evaluation. Second, affidavits from employees and clients who can testify to your daily involvement and stable decisions. Third, a record that shows you considered automation and rejected reckless versions. Fourth, a review of your son's recent actions. We will not accuse without proof, but we will map timelines and money. If there is dirt, I do not want you to twist it. I want the truth, even if it hurts. That is the only way I work. We built a list. Foremen, site managers, engineers who had stood with me in storms that did not make the news, clients who had seen me on site at dawn. Avery brought up a forensic accountant. Her name is Priya Shah. She will follow money without fear or favor. If Nathan moved funds in ways that violated policy, she will find the path. What if he simply believes I am wrong? Does that make him a villain? No. It makes him a son who thinks speed is love. The court is not here to heal that. The court is here to ask whether you can lead. He asked about Claire. I said she has been gone 8 years. Grief turned the plant into a place where I could breathe. He did not write that down. He asked how I sleep. I said, like a man who hears cranes in his head. He said we will schedule a therapist in bereavement and leadership, not to paint you as fragile, to show the court that you take care of yourself and of the people who depend on you. My phone buzzed. A board member wrote a single line. We need to talk. Avery read it and slid the phone back. Not yet. If he is with your son, he will fish for admissions. If he is unsure, he will return. We will invite him in our time. He laid out rules for the coming days. Every email goes through the firm. Every document is scanned and indexed. Keep a handwritten journal of meetings and calls. Drink water. Eat. Sleep. Judges smell frenzy. I asked about cost. He told me. I said yes before fear could speak. He sent me upstairs to the clinic on the 10th floor. Blood work today. Cognitive tests tomorrow. Interview Friday. He would schedule statements for 3 supervisors by Monday. At the door, he stopped me. Graham, I will fight like the company is mine. But there is a second fight I cannot win for you. I knew what he meant. I nodded. I will not let the court steal the work. I will not let pride steal the boy. Back on the street, the wind came off the water with salt in it. I called the plant. Maria, in scheduling, picked up on the first ring. I told her I would be late. She said the crew on line 2 asked if you were all right. I said, tell them their boss is stubborn and fine. She laughed. I stood with the phone warm in my hand and felt something I had not felt since Claire died. I felt ready. The clinic lights were white and merciless. I signed forms, answered questions, held a pen that shook when I didn't want it to. They told me to draw a clock, recite numbers backward, recall a list of words. I passed every test. Still, I walked out feeling like a specimen instead of a man. That night I opened the old cedar box Claire had left me. Inside were letters, folded and yellowing. I had not touched them in years. Grief makes you bury what you cannot face. My hands trembled as I lifted the first envelope. Her handwriting stopped me cold. Curved. Neat. Steady. The same script she used to leave notes in my lunchbox when we were young. Graham. It began, "If you're reading this, I probably lost the fight I was never supposed to lose. Please, don't give all of yourself to steel and schedules. Nathan will need you more than the company ever will. He doesn't want a provider. He wants his father. And now that other wither." I pressed the page to my forehead. My chest burned. How many times had I chosen late nights at the plant over sitting at the kitchen table with them? How many phone calls had I ended with, "I'll make it up to you," but never did? The next letter was from her final weeks. "You are strong, but you are not endless. Stop pretending the company is love. It isn't. Love is presence. Love is time. If you vanish into work, Nathan will grow believing he was second." At her day, I folded it slowly. My eyes burning, she had seen it so clearly. Even as sickness stole her strength, and I had refused to hear. I poured whiskey into a glass and stared at the factory's outline through the rain-speckled window. The plant had saved me when I lost her, but it had also stolen me from my son. I built bridges of iron and let the bridge between us rust. I remembered Nathan's graduation day. His face lit up as he scanned the crowd. I was in a board meeting, 2 states away. Claire had sent me a photo of him holding his diploma. Alone. That was the day, I think. The resentment planted its roots. Another memory. His first baseball game. I promised to be there. The plant's furnace broke down that morning. I stayed until midnight, fixing it myself, telling myself I was saving jobs. When I came home, he was asleep on the couch, the ticket still in his hand. He never asked me again to take him. I thought I was proving love by working harder, but all he saw was absence. At midnight, the whiskey glass was empty. The letters lay across my desk like accusations. I picked up Emily's drawing of the bridge and set it beside Claire's words. Both told me the same truth. I had confused duty with love, pride with presence. But regret is not enough. Regret does not rebuild. I opened a fresh notebook and wrote a vow in ink. I will fight for Carter Steele in court. I will fight for Nathan at home. I will not let Claire's warning die with her. I will not let my granddaughter draw 2 figures forever apart. Ken. When I closed the book, the factory whistle blew in the distance. A new shift was beginning. Sparks would fly. Hammers would fall. Men and women would labor through the night. And I would be here, planning how to keep their work alive. But for the first time in years, I also planned how to keep my family alive. The rain eased near dawn. I set the letters back in the box. Careful this time. Like they were sacred, because they were. Claire had given me her last gift. The truth I refused to see. Now it was mine to honor. Or betray. Voices beat the glass. The room smelled of coffee and fear. I took my place at the head. Nathan sat 3 chairs to my left with a notebook open and a pen ready. He had come to win. Gerald Pike cleared his throat. "We are grateful for your years of leadership, Graham. But the market has shifted. Our duty is to the future." Rowena Mills smiled like a headline. "Disruption defines winners. Carter Steele has been steady. Steady is not a story." Omar Lang watched the table like a man counting rafts. "Risk makes me nervous. Lately I have been very nervous. Before we discuss the petition, we will review performance. Maria from operations set the first slide on the screen. Shipments on time. Defect rate, below 2%. Injury rate the lowest in our history. Revenue steady. Margins modest but strong. Nathan did not look up. Margins can be doubled. With automation, with night shifts guided by sensors, with a reduction in headcount. We have models. We ran pilots last year. We learned where machines help and where they fail. The plan on this table cuts people who hold the line when machines stall. It treats skill as a cost instead of a shield. Our clients pay for that shield. Pike leaned forward. Investors do not pay for sentiment. Clients do. A bridge does not care about sentiment either. It cares about weld quality when the wind is violent. That quality lives in a hand and in a habit. Rowena tilted her head. The industry is moving. If we do not move, we will be left. We will move where it makes us better, not where it makes us hollow. I pointed at the chart that showed the recession years. We kept our crews. We took a smaller profit so families could breathe. Those workers pulled us through the next decade. That was not weakness. That was strategy. Nathan opened his notebook. You are arguing for a museum. We need a machine. We need speed. We need a story that attracts capital now. Tell them the details, not the headline. Replace the manual line on bays 2 and 3 within 6 months. Contract a robotics firm from the coast. Streamline procurement to a single vendor. Trim benefits to industry average. Close the North Shore yard. Relocate those who accept new terms. Offer severance to the rest. Rowena nodded. Clean. Efficient. How many jobs? 85 in the first phase. Another 50 in year 2. Savings of 12 million. Maria shifted in her chair. She had built schedules around faces for 20 years. I lifted a folder. Statements from clients who left competitors after similar plans. They cite failures that began when experience was shown the door. We can adopt new tools. We will not abandon the people who taught us how to build. Nathan smiled without warmth. You confuse loyalty with strategy. I refuse to hide harm under a new word. Call it trimming. Call it efficiency. It is still harm when you do it only to shine a quarterly chart. Pike tapped the table. The petition alleges impaired judgment. You lost your wife. You made choices based on emotion. The charity contract. The retention program. Both expensive. The charity contract funds training for kids who grew up where I did. The retention program kept us alive when the labor market tightened. Look at safety. Look at waste. Look at turnover. They pay for themselves. Avery sat against the wall and wrote. Rowena lifted a report. With automation, profits rise by 25% within a year. Share price climbs. We owe that to investors. We also owe a structure that does not fail in a storm. We build things the world stands on. Shortcuts cost lives. Nathan's voice softened. No one is asking for shortcuts. We are asking you to accept that the world changed. If you cannot, step aside and let me lead. I stood. I told the story of the night the furnace failed and the shift stayed. I told them about the bridge in Vermont. When a storm rolled in and the crew waited an extra day to pour. We lost time. We saved a structure. None of that fits into a model. All of that is our advantage. Pike stared at the window. Omar studied the safety chart. I lowered my voice. If you believe a faster engine can run without fuel, then vote. If you believe a machine can care more than the hands that built it, then vote. But do it knowing the floor will hear and they will remember. Nathan stood. I submit a motion to install interim management pending a capacity review. Effective immediately. Silence. Then Pike. Second. Omar's fingers trembled. I met his eyes. I did not speak. He cleared his throat. I want the court to decide. I will not vote to remove him today. The motion did not carry. Not yet. The meeting broke apart. Nathan paused at the door. This is not over. I picked up my notes. Neither is my love for you. That is the part you keep forgetting. He left. The room emptied. Court and cameras would come next. I pressed my palm on the table. We built this with more than steel. We will defend it with more than anger. The house was too quiet. The walls carried echoes instead of voices. I set my briefcase on the floor and walked straight to the study. Papers covered the desk reports. Affidavits. Medical evaluations still warm from the printer. I switched on the lamp. Its circle of yellow light felt like the only safe ground left in the world. I poured a measure of bourbon and let it burn its way down. Outside the window, Boston's skyline shimmered on the harbor. I remembered the nights Claire used to sit with me, her hand resting lightly on my arm while I read contracts. She would remind me to eat, to sleep, to breathe. Now the chair beside me was empty, and the glass in my hand felt heavier than steel. I opened the cedar box again. Claire's letters still lay there like a map of my mistakes. I didn't read them tonight. I already knew every word. I laid Emily's drawing beside them. The bridge between two figures. I traced the crayon lines with my finger until my eyes blurred. At midnight, Avery called. His voice was steady. I've scheduled depositions with the foreman. Priya is tracing financial flows. We're uncovering gaps in Nathan's numbers. He's promising investors growth that math won't sustain, saying, "Will it be enough?" I asked. Truth usually is. But courts need it dressed in evidence. Keep everything documented. Don't lose control. And he was cited. After we hung up, the silence grew thicker. I pulled the old ledgers from the safe, running my hand across pages filled with Claire's handwriting. She had kept the first books of Carter Steele. Each line showed pennies stretched into payroll. Bills delayed until receivables arrived. Stubborn faith written in graphite. I remembered one night, years ago, when the furnace roared too hot and threatened to crack. I had been ready to shut it down, lose the week's production. Claire stayed beside me, calculating options. "Trust your crew," she said. "They know this machine like you know your own heartbeat." We kept the line going, safe and steady. She had always been right. Now, I had to trust again. Trust lawyers, accountants, workers whose loyalty had outlived paychecks. And somehow, trust myself. At 2 a.m, I walked through the house. Family photographs lined the hall. Nathan at 10. Grinning with a bat too heavy for his arms. Claire laughing in the kitchen. Flour on her cheek. Emily as a toddler on my shoulders. I stopped at each frame, touched the glass, whispered an apology. I returned to the desk and began writing my own notes. What I had built, why decisions were made, the principles that guided them. I wanted the court to hear my voice without shaking. I wrote about safety, about loyalty, about Claire's belief that business without humanity was just machinery. By dawn, pages filled the table. My head ached, but my resolve was clear. I walked to the porch as the sky softened pink over the water. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than fear. I felt purpose. If my son wanted a war, he would get one. But I would not fight only with anger. I would fight with truth, with memory, with the love that still bound us even when he denied it. I lifted Emily's drawing again. 2 figures on opposite sides, a bridge in between. I folded it carefully and slid it into my coat pocket. I would carry it with me to court, a reminder of what I was really trying to save. The harbor wind cut cold across my face, but inside I felt steady. Tonight I had been alone, with ghosts and regrets. Tomorrow I would stand with evidence and allies. Steel bends before it breaks. So does a father. The courthouse smelled of marble and old wood polish. Reporters clustered at the steps, their voices rising like gulls over the harbor. I kept my head down as Avery guided me past them, his hand firm on my arm. Inside, the air was heavy with whispers. Every bench was filled with shareholders, curious attorneys, and strangers who came for drama. I sat at the defendant's table. My hands were steady, but my chest rattled like a furnace before failure. Across the aisle, Nathan entered with his counsel, a woman named Victoria Hale. She was younger than Avery but sharp, her eyes scanning the room as if measuring it for conquest. Nathan wore a tailored suit, his expression calm, confident, almost defiant. He didn't look at me. Judge Miriam Doyle stepped in, her black robe flowing, silver hair pinned back. She was known for cutting through noise, for seeing truth where others saw theater. She sat, and the room fell silent. Case number 243. Carter versus Carter Steel, Incorporated. We are here to determine whether Graham Carter remains competent to manage his business affairs. In grief, the clerk's voice echoed against the walls, and for a moment I felt like I had already been carved out of my own life. Victoria Hale rose first. Her voice was smooth, her gestures rehearsed. Your Honor, this case is not about love or betrayal. It is about responsibility. Carter Steel employs hundreds and serves projects across the nation. But under Mr. Carter's declining leadership, we have seen erratic decisions, excessive sentiment, and an inability to adapt to modern industry. We will show evidence of questionable contracts, emotional outbursts in meetings, and resistance to technological progress. The company cannot survive if sentiment outweighs strategy. See and find. She turned toward the gallery, her voice carrying like a sermon. My client, Nathan Carter, seeks not to destroy his father, but to protect a company from collapse. He does this with great pain, but greater duty. See and find. Nathan nodded solemnly, as if burdened by responsibility. I wanted to shout that it was all a lie, but I clenched my fists and stayed silent. When Avery stood, his tone was quieter, but each word struck like a hammer on steel. Your Honor, Carter Steel has thrived for nearly 4 decades under Graham Carter. Profits have grown steadily. Employee retention is among the highest in the industry. Safety records are unmatched. The plaintiff claims sentiment clouds judgment, but we will show that sentiment is what built this company's strength. Mr. Carter has not lost his edge. He has honed it with experience, loyalty, and vision. This case is not about protecting the company. It is about ambition disguised as concern. And in Munter, the first witness called was Nathan himself. He swore the oath and sat in the box, facing me with a steady gaze. Mr. Carter, Hale began softly. How would you describe your father's leadership in recent years? Nathan's voice was smooth, controlled. My father leads with his heart, not his head. He refuses to modernize. He has blocked automation projects, dismissed new financial strategies, and entered into contracts that drain resources. I respect him deeply, but he is not the leader Carter Steel needs anymore. In TAF, Hale nodded. Can you give an example of an emotional decision that hurt the company? The retention program. He insisted on paying above-market wages during the downturn. Investors were furious. Or the partnership with my mother's old foundation. It costs us hundreds of thousands each year, with no measurable return. When challenged, he grew angry, even shouted in board meetings. That is not rational leadership. The ride, each word struck like a nail. My own son painting me as a relic. When Avery rose for cross-examination, the tone shifted. Nathan, What was Carter Steele's profit margin last quarter? 11%. Heisman. And the quarter before? 10.8. Heisman. So, under your father's declining leadership, profits have grown? Nathan hesitated. Short-term growth doesn't prove long-term viability. Heisman. What about employee retention? 92%. Heisman. Industry average? 68. So Carter Steele keeps its workers, pays them well, and still grows profitably. Would you call that failure? The gallery murmured. Nathan's jaw tightened. Hale objected, but the judge allowed Avery to continue. One by one, the pillars of Nathan's argument cracked. He insisted I was resistant to change. But Avery reminded the court of the pilot programs we had run, of measured adoption instead of reckless overhaul. He called it prudence, not stubbornness. Still, the damage was real. Hearing my son speak of me as unstable felt like rust eating through my ribs. When court recessed for the day, I walked out past him. He looked away, as though ashamed. For a heartbeat I saw not a rival but the boy who once held my hand at the factory gates. Then the moment passed. On the steps outside, cameras flashed. Questions flew like arrows. Avery pulled me through the chaos, his voice low. This is just the beginning. Tomorrow, we bring witnesses. Tomorrow, we fight back. And she won with a 7. That night, alone in my house, I poured another glass of bourbon but left it untouched. I sat in the dark, staring at Emily's drawing, wondering how a bridge could ever span the distance Nathan and I had carved. Morning light fell hard through the courthouse windows, clean and unforgiving. I carried Emily's drawing in my coat pocket like a small engine, steady and warm. Avery sat beside me, quiet as stone. The kind of quiet that comes when a plan has weight. Judge Doyle took the bench. Victoria Hale announced ready. Avery did not rise. He stood. The difference felt like a bell. Your Honor, he said. The defense calls Priya Shah. Quote, Priya walked with the calm of someone who lets numbers do the talking. She swore the oath and sat straight. A thin folder in her hands. A moment of foundation. Avery said, Miss Shah, your work. Quote, forensic accountant, 15 years. I trace flows of capital and compliance in privately held companies. Flame, did you examine Carter Steele's accounts for the past 18 months? Flaying, I did. Fourthing, what did you find? Flaying, a pattern of transfers originating from discretionary marketing and consulting budgets to newly formed entities with no staff and no documented deliverables. 3 transfers in particular stand out. $250,000 in March, $200,000 in June, $285,000 in September. Total of $735,000. ADC2 Unafari won the break too. The gallery stirred. I kept my eyes on Nathan. He stared at the table as if the wood could open and swallow him. Avery lifted a page. Where did those funds go? ADCD, to a consultancy called North Beacon Strategies. The entity was registered by a firm that often masks beneficial owners. The receiving accounts then sent payments to a public relations agency, a lobbying shop, and a private attorney who specializes in shareholder solicitations. All expenditures align with efforts to build support for a leadership change. Quote, in plain terms, company funds were used to finance a campaign to remove the current chief executive. Quote, Victoria stood. Objection. Speculation. Quote, overruled. Judge Doyle said, the witness may state conclusions based on traced payments. Quote, Avery nodded. Were these transfers authorized by the board? Quote, no. Quote, were invoices attached. Quote, generic memos, no scope of work, and another certificate with any benefit to operations, and another certificate content, none documented, and another other stored. The room breathed out like a single lung. Avery let the quiet sit before he moved. The defense calls Maria Ortega, and another certificate. Maria walked to the stand in her work boots and best blouse. She had built schedules around lives for 2 decades. She did not look at the gallery. She looked at me. Then at the judge. Miss Ortega, Avery said. Did you attend any meetings with Nathan Carter in the weeks before the petition? And another certificate content. Yes. He met with supervisors in small groups. What did he promise? 20% raises for engineering. 30% for department heads. New stock options. He said automation would cut costs so much that we could pay more and still beat every competitor. Could those promises be met under existing budgets? No. Not without cutting crews or benefits or both. The math was not there. Did you express this concern? I did. He said investors want a story, and the details would follow. Know that, Braun? Victoria rose again. Miss Ortega, you are loyal to Mr. Carter. Know that, Braun? I am loyal to the floor, Maria said. It keeps this city standing. Know that, Braun? Avery called 2 clients next. A bridge authority director who praised our crews for stopping a pour when wind rose above safe limits. A hospital expansion manager who told the court we finished on time because we refused to cut corners when a shipment arrived flawed. Neither story looked impressive on a chart. Both lived in solid concrete and sleep without fear. Then Avery called me. I took the oath. The wood of the witness chair felt old and honest. Mr. Carter, he began. Did you authorize the transfers Miss Shaw described? No. Would you have approved them if asked? No. Company money builds projects and people, not campaigns. Did you block modernization? I ran pilots. I adopted what kept quality and safety. I refused designs that treated experience like waste. Heaven days. Why did you keep wage floors and retention programs during the downturn? Heaven days. Because the crews who stayed saved us. Because families eat dinner at tables I will never see. Because loyalty buys skill you cannot order by the pound. Have mon de man. Vaser. And now. It is muddle graith. And ebel lun. Avery stopped. He stared at me like a teacher asking the one question that matters. Why do you lead this way? Have now is naughty. Because steel does not forgive lies. Because a bridge is a promise. Because my wife taught me that a ledger is a list of choices, not just numbers. I see the re. He nodded once. No further questions. I see the re. Victoria approached with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Mr. Carter, you have used grief to justify expense. Is that fair to investors? I see the rain. I used grief to remember people are not spare parts. I see the rain. You admit you raised your voice in meetings. I see the rain. I admit I defended safety as if my name were welded to every beam. I see the rain. You admit you rejected immediate profits in favor of sentiment. I see the re. I reject profits that break what we build. I see the rain. She frowned. No further questions. Crier. Avery stood again. Your Honor. The defense moves to admit the bank records, corporate registrations, and the tracing analysis as exhibits. We also submit emails gathered in discovery. He lifted another folder. These are messages sent from Nathan Carter to key employees and investors, promising raises and return targets that the financials could not support. Crier. Victoria's voice sharpened. Objection to character assassination. Crier. Overruled. Judge Doyle said, the documents go to motive and credibility. Thank you, self. Avery read a single line. We will double margins in 1 year without layoffs. He looked up. The plan filed with this court eliminates 135 positions over 2 phases. Thank you, self. The judge leaned forward. Miss Hale, does the petitioner contest the authenticity of these records? Thank you, self. She paused. We need time to review. Thank you, self. You have had discovery. The judge said. The exhibits are admitted. Thank you, self. Nathan still did not look at me. He studied his hands and then the seal on the wall. As if authority might rewrite arithmetic. Avery rested his hands on our table. No further witnesses today. Your Honor. It's Laftortis. The judge turned to Victoria. Redirect or rebuttal? It's Laftor Une. Tomorrow, she said. Voice tight. The gavel fell soft. People stood. Reporters whispered. The sound felt far away. All I could hear was my own breath and the quiet thud of Emily's drawing against my chest. On the steps outside, the air tasted of sea and metal. Avery spoke without turning. Today, the case changed shape. Dale, did we win? I asked. We told the truth and showed the proof. That is what courts listen to. But there is more to do. Keep steady. Dale, across the plaza. Nathan emerged with his team. For a heartbeat, his eyes found mine. He looked not angry but young, like a boy who finally realized the storm he called had arrived. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Victoria touched his elbow and steered him away. I stood there until the square emptied. The city carried on. Buses sighed. Pigeons argued over a crust. Life refused to dramatize our pain. I put my hand in my pocket and felt the edge of the paper bridge. The day had cut deep. It had also cleared fog. Whatever came next, I would walk toward it with the same rule I had asked of every beam under my name. No lies. No weak welds. No shortcuts across a drop. The wind off the harbor rose. I breathed it in and turned toward tomorrow. The third day in court began under gray skies. Reporters clustered by the doors again, their cameras feeding a story that no one in my family wanted told. I kept my head low. Emily's folded drawing still in my coat pocket. Inside, the gallery hummed with tension. This was the day father and son would face each other without lawyers as shields. Judge Doyle called us to order. The defense may call its final witness. Avery rose. The defense calls Nathan Carter. The room shifted. Murmurs spreading like sparks across dry leaves. Nathan walked to the stand. He adjusted his tie, swore the oath, and sat with his jaw set. Avery's questions were direct. Mr. Carter, did you authorize the transfer of company funds to North Beacon Strategies? Yes. They wanted. Were those transfers approved by the board? No. They wansively. Were they used to strengthen Carter Steel operations? They were used to ensure the company had leadership ready for the future. They wanted the jam. Avery pressed. You used company money to finance your takeover. And me's more quais. Nathan's voice grew sharp. I used resources to protect what my father is destroying. And me's more quais. Did you promise employees raises and stock options that could not be funded without massive layoffs? I promised them a future. And me's more quais. A future built on deception, on survival. Nathan shot back. The judge lifted a hand. Mr. Carter, answer the questions, not speeches. And me's more quais. Avery stepped back. No further questions. And me's more quais. Victoria approached, her tone gentle. Nathan, why did you feel compelled to act? Nathan's eyes finally turned to me. Because my father is lost in the past. He makes decisions with his heart, not his head. He cares more about loyalty than progress. He missed birthdays, graduations, everything that mattered outside the plant. He built Carter Steel. Yes. But he broke our family doing it. And now he's breaking the company. And one stacked, the words struck harder than any accusation of incompetence. For a moment I forgot the courtroom. I saw the boy waiting with a ticket for a baseball game I never attended. I saw the empty seat at his graduation. Every memory I had buried rose in front of the world. The judge dismissed the witness. But the damage was done. Not legal damage, Avery had contained that, but damage to the part of me that still believed my son only wanted the company. Now I knew he wanted recognition. Revenge. A father who had never truly shown up. During recess, Avery leaned close. We've given the court evidence. But you need to give them something else. Speak when it's your turn. Tell the truth. Not the polished version. The truth. Physician failed instead of card. When I returned to the stand, I could feel Nathan's eyes on me. Mr. Carter, Avery asked softly, why do you believe you should remain leader of Carter Steel? I took a long breath. Because the company is not just mine. It belongs to every man and woman who stands in the sparks and the cold, who welds steel in the rain, who misses their children's birthdays to finish a job safe and sound. I've made mistakes. I've been absent. My son is right about that. I thought giving him a future meant building walls of iron. I didn't see the walls I built at home. Again, the gallery was silent. I turned and looked at Nathan. I am not incompetent. I am guilty of confusing duty with love. But Carter Steel has never been reckless in my hands. It has been steady, strong, alive. I want it to remain that way. Not for me, not for investors, but for the people who trust their lives to the beams we forge. For my voice cracked. But I didn't care. I still believe in this company. And I still believe in my son. Even if he doesn't believe in me. For I stepped down. The judge called a recess. I walked past Nathan, close enough to hear him breathe. He didn't look at me, but his shoulders trembled. The first crack in his armor. Outside. The sky broke into rain. Reporters shouted questions. I ignored them. The storm above felt easier to face than the storm inside my chest. That night at home, the house felt colder than ever. Claire's letters waited in the cedar box. Emily's drawing lay on my desk. A bridge between two figures. I wondered if bridges could still be built after so much had collapsed. The courtroom felt colder than the rain outside. The gallery stood when Judge Doyle entered. She settled her papers with the care of a surgeon and looked over the rim of her glasses. We sat. Her voice was even. This court has reviewed testimony, financial records, and expert evaluations. The question is competence. Nothing more and nothing less. She paused and let the room breathe. My hands were flat on the table. Avery did not blink. The court finds that Graham Carter remains competent to manage his business. Profits are steady. Safety is exemplary. Retention is strong. The evidence shows prudence, not decline. The words did not feel real at first. They arrived like distant thunder. Then I heard Avery exhale. The sound broke something inside me, and I gripped the edge of the table. The judge continued. However, the court is deeply concerned by irregular transfers traced by the defense. Company funds appear to have been used to support an internal campaign. That matter lies beyond the question of competence, but not beyond the law. I order an independent audit. Findings will be referred to the proper authorities if warranted. A low murmur moved through the benches. Victoria straightened her notes. Nathan stared at the floor. The case is dismissed. Mr. Carter retains full control of Carter Steel. The court expects the parties to conduct themselves with restraint going forward. Her gavel touched wood. The sound was soft and final. People stood. Reporters fled like birds loosed from a net. Avery shook my hand once and let go. I turned toward my son. He had not stood. He sat with his hands clasped so tight the knuckles were pale. For a moment he looked 12 years old again, lost in a room full of adults. I walked to him and stopped at the end of his row. "Nathan," I said. He looked up. His eyes were red and sharp at the same time. "You won." "No one won," I said. "We just stopped the worst version of this story." He swallowed. "I did not mean for it to go there. But it went there." Victoria touched his sleeve. "We have to go." He nodded and passed me without another word. The door closed behind him and left a silence heavier than judgment. Outside, cameras flashed. Avery moved us to the curb and into a waiting car. In the back seat, relief and grief tried to share the same breath. I had kept the company. I had not kept my son. "You did what you had to do," Avery said. "Did I?" I asked. "Or did I prove his point about my priorities? You protected hundreds of families today. That counts." "It does," I said. "So does one boy at a table who could not speak to his father." At the office, the crew had left a cake on the conference table. "Congratulations" in blue icing. Maria hugged me and then wiped her eyes. The floor sent a card. Names filled every line. I read each one. After they went back to work, the room was too quiet. I called Lauren. She answered on the second ring. "How is he?" I asked. "Proud in public and broken at the sink," she said. "Angry at you and at himself. He loves you and does not know how to say it. Tell him I am here," I said. "Tell him I am sorry for every seat I left empty." "I will tell him," she said. I walked the plant. Sparks climbed and died. A welder lifted his hood and nodded. We did not need speeches. At dusk, I drove to the river. I opened Claire's cedar box and read the first letter again. "Do not give all of yourself to steal. Your son will need you more than the company ever will." The river moved without hurry. I rested the letter on the wheel and closed my eyes. I pictured the bridge Emily drew. 2 figures. 1 path. Night shift arrived and laughed as they walked in. Work keeps time with its own clock. I put the letter away and started the engine. On the way home, I passed the field where Nathan once played. The lights were off. I parked and sat with the ghost of a game I missed. I said the words I should have said in the bleachers. "I see you. I am proud. I am here." When I reached the house, the porch light glowed. I poured a glass of water and stood at the window. Victory is loud in public. It is quiet in a kitchen when the person you need is not at the table. I set Emily's drawing by the sink. Bridge. 2 figures. Simple lines. A plan. Tomorrow I would ask for a private meeting. No lawyers. No votes. Just a father and a son and the truth we had both avoided. I switched off the light. The city breathed. Somewhere a whistle blew as a freight rolled through the night. Steel on steel. The sound that built my life. The sound I had to learn to share with the word home. The cafe was small, tucked between a bookstore and a florist. Far from the courthouse. Far from Carter Steele. I chose it because it had no board members. No cameras. Only the sound of spoons stirring mugs. I sat by the window. Hands wrapped around black coffee that had gone cold before he arrived. Nathan walked in late. His coat damp from drizzle. He looked thinner. Older. The fight drained from his shoulders. For a moment he paused at the door, scanning the room like he wasn't sure he should be here. Then he saw me. His steps were slow, careful, as though the floor might collapse. "Dad," he said quietly. I gestured to the chair across from me. "Sit." He did. We didn't speak for a long while. The clatter of cups filled the silence. His hands fidgeted with a sugar packet, folding it in half. Then again, until it split. Finally, he lifted his eyes. "I never wanted to ruin you," he whispered. "I just wanted to be seen." It's nodded no sure. The words struck deeper than any accusation in court. My throat closed. I forced myself to breathe. You were always seen. Nathan. I just didn't show it. I thought giving you a company was love. I didn't know you needed me to show up. To say the words. To sit in the stands. As his jaw tightened. You missed too many stands. Dad. Too many dinners. Mom used to cover for you. She'd tell me you were working for us. But after she died, I stopped believing that. As I closed my eyes, her voice echoing through memory. Don't give all of yourself to steal. She had warned me. She had begged me. And I had answered with silence. When I opened my eyes, Nathan was staring at the table. I thought if I proved I could run Carter Steel better than you, maybe then you'd admit I mattered. Filth, you mattered the day you were born, I said. But I buried that truth under contracts and deadlines. And you carried the weight of my absence. Filth, his eyes glistened. Then why did you fight me so hard? Because you were tearing apart the only thing I knew how to build. And because I didn't know how else to talk to you. War was the language we both understood. It's all tay. Silence hung between us. Heavy but not hostile this time. Outside. People passed with umbrellas, rushing through their own storms. He leaned back, exhausted. So what now? You keep the company. I disappear? No. I said firmly. I don't want to win without you. I want to build with you. Not as enemies. As partners. As father and son. It's all tay. He shook his head. After everything I did, after dragging you through court, especially after that, I answered, because it showed me how badly you wanted to be heard. And because bridges only matter when they're built over deep cracks. I wouldn't know the time. His eyes filled. But he didn't look away. For the first time in months, he let me see the boy behind the armor. The boy who once drew cranes in crayon and asked how far steel could reach. I reached across the table and laid my hand over his. He didn't pull away. I forgive you, I said. And I hope you can forgive me. But even if you can't yet, I'm not leaving this table. Not this time. He one of the slash. Nathan's lips trembled. He nodded once. A small motion. But it felt larger than any verdict. The coffee between us had gone cold. But something else had warmed. Fragile. Flickering. But real. A beginning. When we stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. Dad? Yes? Would you come to Emily's play next week? She's been asking if you'll be there. They's not had. My chest tightened. I'll be in the front row. And in the manble. He nodded again. And this time, there was a trace of a smile. Small, cautious, but alive. Outside, the drizzle had stopped. The sky was still gray. But for the first time in a long while, I felt the weight in my chest lift just enough to let hope in. The smell of roast chicken filled the kitchen. Lauren moved between stove and counter with quiet ease, humming under her breath. Nathan set the table, careful with the good plates that only came out for holidays. Emily darted between us. Her dress splattered with paint from school. I stood in the doorway, coat still on, watching a scene I thought I had lost forever. Family, not perfect, not healed, but together. Grandpa! Emily squealed when she saw me. She tugged me to the table. You sit here, next to me. Atamas. I hung my coat and followed her. My hands trembled as I lowered myself into the chair. Nathan was across from me. Our eyes met for a second too long, then dropped to our plates. But it wasn't hostility this time. It was the weight of new ground being tested. Dinner began with small talk. Emily chattered about her play at school, acting out half the lines between bites of bread. Lauren asked about the plant. Nathan and I answered together by accident, then stopped, looked at each other, and smiled. Tentative, but real. After dessert, Nathan cleared his throat. "Dad, we've been working on something." He handed me a folder. Inside was a draft agreement, shared leadership, co-CEOs, clear boundaries, dispute resolution protocols. His handwriting marked the margins. Transparency, respect, family time protected. I stared at the words until they blurred. "You mean this?" He nodded. "If you'll have me, if you'll trust me, and I will see the with." I looked at Emily. She was drawing again, her crayons scratching fast across the paper. "See, Grandpa, it's you and Daddy at the same desk. No more bridge, just one table, and I will see the with." My throat closed. I pressed a hand to my face. For the first time since Claire's funeral, I wept in front of my family. Nathan came around the table. His hand rested on my shoulder. "I don't deserve forgiveness this quickly, but I want to earn it. Starting here." He wanted Tenta. I stood and pulled him into my arms. He stiffened, then held me back. For a moment, he was not the rival who tried to take my company. He was my son, my boy. Lauren raised her glass of wine. "To family," she whispered. Nathan lifted his too. "To building, not breaking. We work in Godden." I raised mine last. "To bridges, finally crossed. We not the Ben." We clinked glasses. Even Emily lifted hers of apple juice, her smile brighter than any verdict. Later, when the table was cleared and the house quieted, Nathan walked me to the door. "See you at the office Monday, partner. We work in Godden." The word stung and healed all at once. I shook his hand, then pulled him in again. "Partner," I repeated. Outside, the night was calm. The harbor lights shimmered. I walked to my car with Emily's new drawing tucked safely inside my coat pocket. This one showed no divide, no distance, just two figures, side by side, with a little girl smiling between them. The road home wound past the plant. Sparks from the night shift lit the sky. I slowed the car, rolled down the window, and listened. The sound of steel on steel. Strong, steady, enduring. For the first time in years, it did not sound like loneliness. It sounded like a beginning.